they immediately stop what they're doing and they clap their hands 3 times to know that you have their attention. So I'm Maria Turk, I'm the Director of Faith Formation here at St. Francis of Assisi. I'm going to be as quietly as possible gathering some more chairs. When Pastor Burkes and I talked earlier in the week, we were deciding whether we should start upstairs, whether we should start downstairs. And I said, well, maybe we should start upstairs, and whenever when 20 or 30 people come up, we could quickly come downstairs. And then this afternoon, when he came in, we decided, no, we're just going to start downstairs. And we have too many people. Isn't that awful? So I'm really excited. I'm going to let Father introduce him. I'm here for nuts and bolts. So just so you know, there are 3 exits. There are 3 restrooms here. They're called water closets, so anybody can use them. There's one directly in the front, and if you go down the hall, there are 2 others. People who need more room should use either of the ones down the hall, because the one in the front is very small.
There's 3 chairs over here.
There's chairs over here.
There's 3 of them over here.
And there's some food and drink here. Please help yourself. And again, you know, you're grown up, so if you need to use the restroom, you can just use the restroom. You know, I feel like I have to say that because people think that, you know, you don't have to raise your hand. No. So I'm going to give this to Father, and I am going to welcome all of you to St. Francis in that seat.
Along with Maria, I also welcome you. Welcome all are here. My father, Tim Toller, pastor here at St. Francis of Assisi. It's wonderful to see such a great turnout. As Maria said, we weren't sure how that would go, but so I presume everyone reads Everyday Spirituality, right? So it's great to have Norris with us here in Binghamton, as well as here at Hillcrest and St. Francis of Assisi. We welcome all of our parishioners, neighbors near and far, who have arrived, came. I understood some people came in from deposits. Anywhere else for the deposit? Maryland? Really? Wow. Where in Maryland? We'll have to talk about that. But no, so that's great, wonderful. So I know it's an exciting afternoon. All looking forward to have Chaplain Norris Burkes with us. And we've spoken on the phone and communicating in preparation for all this. So I know he's looking forward to being with you here this afternoon. His background, all very interesting, is a military career he had since 1987. It included the active duty Air Force, Air National Guard, until his retirement 9 years ago in 2014. I'm going to let him explain this basilica thing. But he did worship in a basilica in Turkey, right?
Izmir, Turkey.
In Izmir, Turkey. He served as a combat hospital chaplain in Iraq, in addition to deployments to Saudi Arabia and Panama. Concurrent to his reserve service, he served as a board-certified healthcare chaplain at Sutter Memorial, Kazar, Methodist, and Mather, Virginia hospitals. He entered official retired life July 1st, 2017. Oh, 2017. I thought 3 years ago. No, 2017. But continued in part-time work in hospice at the foothills of Grass Hill. He comes from California. He and his wife, Becky, is over there at the door near the books. That's Becky, his wife, who's traveling with him. And he is currently the part-time pastor at Community Church and American Baptist Church, a parish in Nevada City, California. Highlighting his chaplain work, Burkes writes a spirituality column, as we all know, and we are privileged to have that in our papers here, at least in Binghamton. The Press Connects on Saturdays, page 2 or page 3 every Saturday. It's a humorous and always good message that he offers. Hope-filled approach to everyday life, everyday spirituality. be the days that we're living in. It's nice to have a refreshing column on something that's light, but with a message. You know, over there are the wide variety of his books that are available. He will sign, and you're welcome to purchase, and he will sign those as well. So you're not here to hear me, but you want to hear Chaplain Norris Burkes. So welcome to St. Francis of Assisi Parish in Binghamton, New York.
Thank you. Are you gonna say something first or later? You wanna?
I don't know.
Come on up.
We never.
Becky actually has it. This is my wife Becky. We've been married for 43 plus, almost 44 years. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I met her, but I'm going to tell you that later. But right now, a lot of you have read in my column about the Chispa project. And if you just read the word, you probably said Chispa. It's really fun to hear how you guys pronounce California towns, because I'm not even going to try to pronounce some of the freeway signs I've seen. So anyway, the Chispa project, and he's just going to give you about 3 minutes or 4 or 5. So there you go.
Okay, so Chispa Project, as many of you know, is near and dear to our hearts because our daughter established the nonprofit organization several years ago in Honduras to establish libraries in the public schools. At the time, I said, why does it have to be Honduras? So far away, so dangerous. So I'm going to answer a little bit about that. To date, they've delivered 57,354 books. They've worked and trained with 990 teachers, and they've reached 18,488 students. So to know why Honduras, you have to back up a little bit. She went to visit a friend who was there volunteering with the Peace Corps. She went over Christmas. First bad mark, she went at Christmas. Later, after that visit, the Peace Corps was pulled out by the United States because Honduras was so dangerous. Sarah went back the next summer without her friend there to visit and volunteered in a one-room schoolhouse working alongside the teacher there. She'd call me several times a week. What can I do for this kid? What can I do for this kid? This kid's not getting anything. Then that was just for the summer. I thought, okay, good, just the summer. Then she got a paid position in a teaching her in a bilingual school for a year. And again, I thought, okay, 1 year, that's fine. We can do that. And at the end of that year, putting together her experiences from the 2 schools, she realized this education system needs a lot of help. Maybe I could help. So she asked her Honduran friends, what is it that I could do with my resources, my connections, without coming in and being the gringa that comes in and saves the day and fixes your life? And so they had a lot of communication going on with her friends. And they talked about, well, you could build a school. Yeah, but the government's supposed to do that. You could give new updated textbooks. Again, that's the government's responsibility. Do we really want to step in and take care of everything the government's supposed to be doing? How about supplement it? So together they came up with the idea, children's picture books at school. The government did not provide school libraries, hardly town libraries. I looked it up last night. There are 4 public libraries in Honduras. Okay, and they're all like college level. So when I've told people this, sometimes they say, picture books. Really? That's gonna make a big difference. What about medical supplies? What about food? What about shelter? What about housing? Yes, all of those are important needs. But how about if we start at this level and, I didn't write this word down, and enable the kids to grow and provide that for their own country, to give them something, a spark for interest in learning, so they will not join the gangs that are prevalent. The picture books increase interest in reading, and if you can read, you can learn. The problem with the picture book also, you might say, oh, why is that such a big deal? There aren't any. They're not accessible. There's a huge mall in the capital city where there's a beautiful bookstore with expensive books. And those books are just not accessible to the rural areas, to a lot of the people on the streets near the mall that don't go in the mall. So the picture books were what the community decided. That's what needed to be done. So now Sarah's team works with the school to bring 500 to 1,000 books, depending on the size of the school, and to train the teachers what to do with them in their classroom. How to hold it here and read it sideways and enjoy the book and get excited with the kids about the book. A lot of those teachers had never seen a picture book. They hadn't read one. They hadn't held it up. So we grew up with Dr. Seuss, learning how to read, how to make it easier and exciting. They didn't have it. So to get the books there and to get them to the library, one way that they do it is with volunteer groups. I've lost track, but I think it's 4 or 5 different volunteer groups. One of my first experiences was just with Sarah, Norris, and I, and she had 1 employee at the time, and we went to an orphanage. We cataloged books and put them in 18 tubs so that they could rotate around the cottages where the children lived. This was a joint effort with the Catholic Relief Services, and it provided this library for over 700 kids. Another time I went, before she was really getting the volunteer groups going, there was a Rotary Club that was funding one of the libraries, and I was there with them that week doing all of the activities. And this year I took some teacher friends with me, and we get to the school, we catalog the books, we give the school the list of the books that they have, so they'll know that they got what they contracted for. Which point, they are required to help a little financially. They don't, Chispa Project doesn't want to just give it to them, give. They want them to have some ownership, some pride in the project. Sarah had noticed at other schools, they'd say, oh, look at our library. Oh wait, let me get the key. They open it up and it's sparkling and nobody's touched them because they don't want them ruined. So they didn't want the kids to use them. So Chispa Project approaches it very differently, and that's part of the teacher training. After we catalog the books, we assemble the bookshelves, we set out the mats and the pillows, and we paint a mural on the wall for the library. We also paint a mural in each classroom for the reading corners. So, thinking back to when Sarah first arrived, when she had a motorcycle, and she put a box of books on the back of her motorcycle and ride up the mountain to a tiny school and give them the books, to now she has 6 employees with an office and a room for the inventory and a car. That's my favorite part. And she's able to do that with Chispa Project, with her team. It's a really strong team right now. They're able to do that thanks to readers of the column who constantly send in money. And if anyone here has gotten a little gracias note with kids on it from me, come by and say hi, because I'd love to put a face to the name. And the Rotary Club, like I mentioned, people like Catholic Relief Services. So I'm sharing all of this with you so you'll know something is going on with our neighbors who are pressing our borders, and one thing that we could do to help them enjoy staying in their country with their family where they'd like to be. So you could become a monthly donor, you can see me afterwards, or you could get together a group of friends and plan a volunteer trip and go down and do all that work that I said. It's not hammering, there's not a lot of sweat, it's fun, enjoyable, we get to spend some time with the kids, especially on the last day, I left that part out. On the last day, we get to present the books with an activity in each classroom. And we get to work with the kids, and they get to chatter to you in Spanish, and you say, no habla español, and then they just keep talking. So they don't mind. So let me know if you're interested in learning more. I have, back at the table, I have the website online, so you can look it up and see all the videos and pictures and everything of past projects. Thank you for listening.
We have another talk she gives about her grandkids, so we recently have a grandchild, Ellie Burkes, and she has a Honduran passport, so there you go. So, all right, we're going to start with a little business here. I mean, we've got some cell phones in here. I want you to turn off your cell phone, because here's the deal. Did you turn it to mute? Because here's the deal. Did you know that you can tell cell phones whether it's a girl's cell phone or a boy's cell phone? Do you know that? I'm going to show you how. So if a girl's cell phone rings, they will. I wonder who that is so rude. The guy said turn them off. You know, she said that. And then suddenly she realizes it's hers, and she digs deep in her purse, and she finds it, she turns it off, or it's already stopped. I'm like, okay, that's a girl's cell phone if it rings like 5 times. Now, if it's a guy's cell phone, ours come off right away. You know why? Because we're always holding it, or we got it on our belt. We want to show you we got a phone, you know. So when my cell phone rings, you bet I'm on it to turn it off, because I'm like, I know where it is. So that's the difference between a boy's cell phone and a girl's cell phone, just so you know. All right, well, here's the thing too. I want to talk to you just a minute. And people say, well, what are your talks about? I don't really know until I start. Sometimes, most of them anyway. No, I do. But I compare them to a concert. So, like, I don't sing, at least not loud enough for a lot of people. But I sing. But when you go to see a concert, right? You hear your favorite songs. So I'm a storyteller. I have lots of individual stories for you. If you're someone organized like my wife, and you're going to take notes, and there's an outline, and you want to know what to take away from here, yeah, that's not this speech. But you will hopefully be inspired. You won't know where I'm going next, but I hope that you enjoy it. And let me just start with a few stories here. First, I want to tell you the difference between a chaplain and a priest. Okay, chaplains get paid more. No. Let me start on a little more serious. So, I'm always getting these emails from people that say Chaplain Burke, and I'm like, wait, let's start this talk with a spelling bee. How many can spell my last name? Burkes, because people say Burke, but that's okay. I don't get offended with that. But when they write me Chaplain, then how do you spell Chaplain? Does anybody know how to spell Chaplain? CHAPLAIN. So you can't see this from afar, but this is a cover of my new book that comes out next month. It's called Tell It to the Chaplain. And somebody said over here, so it's only 2 pages. I already read it then. No thanks, But on the front is a cartoon that I purchased. Anyway, it's of a general's desk. The general is on his intercom, yelling at the lieutenant in the other room, because in front of his desk is Charlie Chaplin, the actor. CHAPLIN. And he says to the lieutenant, "Lieutenant, I said, get me a chaplain." So that is the gist of my new book, Tell It to the Chaplain. But I said this today, I said I would talk a little bit about my life as a chaplain, about life, love, and loss. The first thing I wanted to mention too, I forgot to say, so why are we here in New York? I live in Sacramento area, or pastor a church just about an hour north in the gold country of Sacramento. When you think where I live, think pine trees, not palm trees. So it's not like that. It's scary. It's a little bit like, I've been into Elmira and I've been into the gorges and there, and so we can be a little bit like that. But I want to tell you that we are here because my wife had it in her head a couple of years ago that we have been to most of the 50 states. And she goes, it wouldn't take much for us to finish the 50. And so yesterday, she's going to wonder if does he remember where I am? Because I woke up in 7 different hotels in 7 days. So I went to the Baptist Mecca. That's the Rhode Island where our leader is. Our Roger Williams founded the Baptist Church, so he's there, and there's a national monument to him. And I study Roger Williams. He really believed that we all ought to have a right to believe freedom of religion, but he believed in freedom from religion. So anyway, we've been to all the 50 states, so that's why we're here, right? So I wrote this down, so you probably want to know, but we went to the grounds for sculpture in Seward Johnson in New Jersey, and that was one of the things I liked. Mystic Seaport in Connecticut, wonderful place. Hiked the Delaware Gap, did a lot of things. So, and now we are here in Binghamton. I keep getting corrected. I'm telling you, you think your names are different. I mean, you think our West Coast, so Binghamton. I got lots of emails. Chaplain, did you know you're going to Binghamton, not Burlington? So, yeah, okay. Oh, and tomorrow night I will be at All Saints Episcopal at 6 o'clock, and it won't be the same stories. So if you come in, it will be faith. I'm going to be talking about faith and the other 7 F words I live by. Come out and find out what that is at the Episcopal Church. So anyway, so what is a chaplain? I get that a lot, because you see on TV at some horrific scene, somebody's got a jacket on and it says chaplain, and you're like, most people know what it is. So I just want to draw a difference, because this is not the funny part, but there's a difference between the ones you see sometimes on television or at the news. So I am what you call a professional chaplain, which I just think that just sounds so, like uppity, right? So I've coined the word, I'm a career chaplain. It just means all my life I've been paid for being a chaplain in a hospital. But wait a minute, a hospital, in the military, and a hospice, and what's the guy, the guy that does the game show, the Three Doors, so the Monty Hall show, what is it, Monty Hall? You pick behind the 3 doors, let's make a deal, that's it. Let's make a deal. So I felt like God once said to me, let's make a deal. And I'm like, well, behind door number 1 is hospital chaplaincy and military and hospice chaplaincy, and I got to do all 3. And so the difference between, there's a lot of people that call themselves chaplain and they're volunteers. And I love them to death, but there is also a very, very, very ultra-conservative group, and they've gotten into Texas now. Texas state law says now elementary schools must have a chaplain. And it's their definition of chaplain. It's an evangelical who believes that little children need to come to their point of view about Christ. It's very scary. So when you meet someone that's a chaplain, I would just like you to ask them, tell me about your training, because a chaplain, a career chaplain, has had all the education. Well, I don't know what Father Tim's full education is, but like me, he went to seminary, He went to college and seminary, and then hospital chaplaincy requires you to go to a 1-year internship. That means every day for 40 hours a week, I reported at University of California, Davis. And on the third day, I wanted to quit. Why did you want to quit? Because by that time, I had found out that there was a lady in our group who was Catholic. No, I gotta say more than just Catholic. She was a lesbian. And I had just left my Southern Baptist church at 30 years old, and I was very sure that my Southern Baptist ordination would be withdrawn if I went to a program that accepted lesbians in their group. And so I called my denominational headquarters in Atlanta, and I got the guy out of bed, I think, and came to the phone, and I told him everything that had happened. I said, should I quit? Am I not going to get to be a chaplain because I'm in this liberal program? And he said, Norris, because that's what they call me from Georgia, Norris, I did my training in a women's prison. Need I say more? So I stayed. And then, the next day I went to my supervisor, called us in. Are you familiar with the CPE? Yeah, you know a little bit. So he called us in, and he said to us both, he said, you two could be best friends if you weren't so afraid of each other. And I said, she's afraid of me? And she said, he's afraid of me? I said, yeah, I'm afraid of you, I said. Because you represent everything that I was told that doesn't work. And she said, well, I think you're going to chew me out, and I think you're going to condemn me and mess with me and all that. And I said, no, I respect you. And so I had a chance to prove that. The very next day, we were seated at a table, much like this one, with this many people at it, because we had a small program. The phone rang. Our supervisor picked it up. He said, yes, I'll send one right away. And he puts it down. So this was our first call among these fresh students. And he pointed to me, because I was the only one, he pointed to, I don't want to offend him, he pointed to the Catholic priest that was in the group. And the priest said, well, I can't go. Why is that? Oh, I forgot to tell you. We were supposed to go, they needed somebody to baptize a baby that had just died. And he goes, I can't go because we don't baptize babies that have died. Pointed to the next guy and said, did you see a Presbyterian? He said, I mean, this is right out of the story of the Good Samaritan, right? He pointed right to the Presbyterian. He said, I can't go, I'm not ordained. And I said, and I can't go because I'm Baptist and we don't baptize babies, living or dead. And I said, once more, because this came from my military child, you can't force me to do something that my denomination wouldn't want me to do. And then he turned to Vicki. And he said, Vicki, will you go? She goes, well, I'm not ordained and I'm not a minister. But I'll go. And she went. And she came back into our classroom a couple hours later. And do you know, we were curious. We didn't want to set foot in that nursery, but we were curious. And we said, how did it go, Vicki? What was it like to hold a dead baby and to baptize? And tears began to flow from her. And she said, it was an honor. It was an honor to be in a place where no one else got to go. And they trusted me to hold
that baby in my hands, and I said, can I hold it? And they trusted me. And I baptized it. Look, Catholic, Presbyterian, Baptist, this is not time to talk theology. This is the time to talk grief and holding children and blessing them in a moment. And that's where I became a chaplain. Not all of that's funny, Chaplain. No, it said laugh here on the thing here. Well, I got some stories because, you know what? So, I don't know. What is the rating here? We PG, PG-13, I don't know, hospital, I don't know. So the same Vicky, so I came back to the group and I said, I was just in a room and I was talking to a guy that perforated his colon. And we were like, how do you perforate a colon? And Vicky goes, you don't want to know. But I did want to know, because I was a curious little Baptist. Anyway, the next day she put a condom in my locker. That's what she did to me the whole time. I'll explain it later. I should have, that was not in my notes. But, I told you people misspell my name and call me different names, but the one I like the best, I think, is, well, I had a friend of mine, he read my column a lot, and he wanted to name me, what was it, America's Favorite Chaplain. He said, you should put that in your moniker, America's Favorite Chaplain. I said, no, really, what I really like is a chaplain, I call it the bomb dump chaplain. And he looked at me, the bomb dump chaplain? Yeah, I got to tell you a story, I said. That's what, it happened to me in one of my first assignments. I keep reading this, but I know the story, so I'm just going to come back out here and tell you the story and see what happens. So, we were in my first assignment, and we were getting ready for an inspection. A guy named Ben Perez, Chaplain Ben Perez, was coming from military people. When they tell stories, they always have to tell all the names, so that's it. Ben Perez, he's a steely-eyed Texan, and he's coming from Denver to inspect us at our little base outside of San Jose, California. We were stationed there actually at Moffett Field, if you know that, but we were there, and so what would this inspection entail? And our supervisor, Jim Young, said, well, you have to go out and count the amount of visits you're making every day and we have to write that up, and we have to give them a report of how well we're doing. And we're like, well, how do you do that? Father Richard Reagan and I are standing looking at each other going, well, what do we do? Well, you just count everything. Everything? Like everything when I say hello to people coming? Yeah, that was a chaplain visit. Hello, ma'am, you're blessed today. Or hello, how's the weather? That's 2 visits already I've made from up here. And so we start counting them. We call this pencil whipping in the military. And so we made all these things. And so we made all these reports together. And when he came, Chaplain Ben Perez, he said, oh, I've read your reports. I see you guys are very active here among the people. He said, I would just like to know, he said, I'd like to know how many of you have been to the bomb dump. And we're like, the bomb dump? Did anybody tell this guy? Our base was Space Command. We literally flew satellites. We didn't fly airplanes. We had these big communication dishes up, and we told these satellites who to look at that day. That was above my pay grade. I didn't know who we were looking at. I can't tell you if I did. But anyway, so that's what we did there. And we're like, Perez, you're from Space Command. We don't have any bomb dumps here. Ah. He said, I'm not talking about the bomb dumps literally. He said, I'm talking about going places where nobody knows people's names. He said, I'm talking about, do you know the names of the people that clean your office? I'm talking about, do you know the names of the people that process your urine samples in the lab? Well, we were chaplains, we were officers, by gosh. We knew the colonel on base, and we knew the captains on base. We knew who was important. But we knew also what Perez was referring to. Was he not referring to Matthew chapter 25, where Jesus taught about caring for people of a lesser privilege? Wasn't he talking about the prisoner, the sick, the migrant? Wasn't he talking about the equivalent of caring for Jesus himself? Anyone working in the bomb dump of life would be counted among those who Jesus called the least of these. And so his question, Perez's question about whether we were the bomb dump chaplain, raised a good issue. It was a reminder early in my career that while statistics remain a necessary tool, they're not the mission. They're not the mission. I asked somebody to count the people in the room today. They're going to in a minute, I think. Does that mean the number of people here, does that mean that you are not important? Statistics can guide our mission, but they're not the mission, Perez would say. And so that's where I coined the term, or that's where I carried the term bomb dump chaplain, right? But my best term, when a Baptist looks at his watch, there's really nothing to that. So, but I hope to have you out about 20 minutes. Real quick. So I was looking at a badge. I was working in a hospital for a couple years, and I had this badge, of course, given to me by HR, right, the HR department. And it said spiritual care department. At least that's what I thought it said, until somebody said, one of the patients I was talking to said, I think they left out the I think they left out the I and the R, and it says spit chaplain. Spit department, spit your care, like spit. And so I told some people up here we're in the spit zone, and that's what we're talking about. But so, of course, I immediately got that corrected, but not long after that, I went to see a patient, and they were from the Hmong community, so an Asian community, and I let the patient know, like I let all my patients know, that I'm here to provide for you what you need. So another definition of a chaplain is, I tell people all the time, as a hospital chaplain, I have put crystals on people's wrists. I've turned the bed in the feng shui direction, put a healing blanket on the bed, put garlic under the bed, collected bones to be burned, and placentas to be buried. I've taken off my shoes, I've burned incense, and I've read from the Quran, and on Sunday I'm a Baptist. Because it doesn't matter when I come see you in your environment, it doesn't matter what I am, it matters what you need. And so I asked this lady what she needed. She said, I would like a bottle of water. And I said, oh, you mean like this? And so she, she started to say, well, I'm a shaman, and she said, I'm going to put some water in my mouth, and I'm going to spit it on this patient. I'm sorry, what? Well, I'm going to, I got that, and so maybe this is spit care, but so I said, well, I'm gonna have to check with the nurses on that, and so I went back and she wants some water for what? Well, she wants to spit it on the wound of the patient in there, and she's like, well, the wound is closed, and you can do that, and so okay. That was one of the visits I made later in my career, but sure enough, that's what she did. Now, I would tell you, are we supposed to judge whether or not that helped them? There was a story about he must have been a Baptist. He went to a funeral of a Oriental. Yeah, or anyway, it was a funeral, and they put food around the funeral, in the funeral, or at the gravesite, and he said, the Baptist whispered to the guy, when do you expect your relatives, your dead relatives, to arrive and eat that food? He said, about the same time you get your relatives here to smell the flowers. Well, so, I mean, I've seen some strange stuff. So getting a placenta to be buried that's very common, and that's a good thing. That's when the birth has turned out well. Well, I promised you I'd say something about love, and I have to say, in the military in 1925, Army enlisted people were permitted only to marry with the written supervision, written permission of their superior officer. And so the regulation spawned this old World War II joke. If the Army wanted you to have a wife, they would have issued you one. So I wasn't issued my wife exactly. But I'll tell you how I just happened to meet her, because it's in your hymn book. I found it in here. The advice that was given to me to meet them. So I was in 7th grade, and I went to a church camp, and us boys, we were only concerned about Jesus at the church camp, but a few of them, they were concerned about girls and stuff. So, I had to follow them to help them out. But we had a camp counselor that said, guys, if you guys will just be quiet during worship tonight, and if you'll be kind and just listen to the speaker, I will tell you how to meet the most beautiful girl in all the world. And we're in. So here he comes one night. We all returned. You can picture this tent and this bunks and all that. And so we returned, and Mr. Biddle said, all right, everybody, get in bed, time out, lights out. And he turns out the lights. And we're like, what? Wait a minute. You promised us you'd tell us. And, oh, yeah, okay. So he turns back on the lights, and he grabs his Bible, and I'm thinking, look, I was raised by a Baptist pastor, and he never mentioned in the Bible there's a place to find the most beautiful girl in the world. It's like, I know it's not there. But he opens his Bible, and he turns to this verse found in 445 of your hymnal: seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Yep. He's like, seek God, and you just might be given the woman of your dreams, because that's who you're supposed to have. Well, look, I'm not going to, that's advice that works. That's the simplest way to put it, right? But still I did. I tried that. And I ended up, when I came to another Baptist camp right after high school to work in Gloria, New Mexico, and my mom saw Becky's name on the bulletin board, and she said, you were in kindergarten with this girl. And I'm like looking for dates. I'm still seeking first the kingdom of God, but I'm like, I'm thinking, there's not been a better pickup line than that. So I go to her dorm, and I knock on her door, and her room, Becky's looking to see if I tell the story right this time. So, but she did. He came to the door, a friend said, there's a guy at the door asking for you, and it's like, and his name is Ed. Ed. That's another story. I decided to do a little anonymous name for a little while. That's my middle name is Ed. So she comes to the door wearing a towel because she just got out of the shower, and I thought that was a great time to deliver mine. So I said, "Hi, I'm Ed." I said, and you and I went to kindergarten together. And I'm wondering if she could just repeat the line that she gave back to me.
So?
And it was all uphill from there. Wow. Our dads knew each other, and I think, again, there was a so, and like, okay. But we began seeing each other and exchanging letters over the next 4 years and got married, right, just before seminary. after 4 years of dating. She went to Cal Baptist College and I went to Baylor University. By the way, on my, did I ever mention in my column that I've been to Yale? Because like, that was just a week ago and we drove through, and that's a really pretty school. Well, I have one more story to tell you. Actually, I had 8, so there's just, you guys are so lucky. And I will be telling more stories at I want you to come, if you can, to the faith and faith and the other 5 F words I live by, because I'm gonna have some funny stories, I'm gonna have some tragic ones, but I'm gonna tell you the most important, the most valuable lesson that I learned when I was in Iraq, when I listened to the prayer of a gentleman that wanted me to help him pray that God would forgive the man that killed his squad leader. And what I learned from forgiveness from that is, well, it's in one of the books back there, but I'd love for you to come and hear that story. It's a valuable story of forgiveness. It's what I try to tell churches everywhere I go. It's a hard story for me to tell. But I leave you with one laugh. And again, I've already kind of tested the water on whether we're PG-13 here or not. And the story I'm about to tell you, people have laughed and fallen on the floor everywhere, but I've also received a letter, or maybe 2, of people that were offended by it. So if you're offended by it, this is a bathroom story, so I'm just going to tell you ahead. This is about loss. Loss. Because I promised you I'd talk about loss. Well, one of the places I deployed to was Saudi Arabia in 1999. And, I deployed to Saudi in 1999, anxious to know whether my name would get on the promotion list, because in the Air Force, if you don't, all our branches, if you don't make major, the jump from captain to major is big. And it means, like, there's a difference between a career officer and a thanks for your service officer. And so I was anxiously awaiting my career news. And so finally, just a few days before Christmas, my chaplain supervisor, Chaplain Mike Bradshaw, and staff priest John Bell. So you know it's bad when a chaplain and a priest come to your door. By the way, I gotta tell you, do you know how, I was told this in the Air Force among priests, do you know what priests call each other in the Air Force, in the military? Well, they call each other father. If they're mad at one another, they call each other chaplain. It's true. It's like, okay. It's a bit frosty in there. They're chaplaining each other. So here comes Father Bell, who is just such a wonderful man. So I figured they're knocking on my door. They're coming to my little apartment there. And I figured they were carrying some good news, and I was excited. And Bradshaw, just before he even sat down, he said, I'm afraid that you've been passed over for promotion. You're not going to make major. And he said, and I promise you, he said, you'll be reconsidered next year. But this was always his words. Whenever someone always mumbles the words, trust me, you're like, trust me, he said. This is a one mistake Air Force, and that was a term that was used, probably still is. So one mistake Air Force, and it's true. If you get passed over for major, you'll be reconsidered, but it'll be like, yeah, not really. So he said, trust me, you need to make plans for your life, and you're probably going to be out here before next Christmas. And so for the next few days, few weeks, my mind wasn't really in the game there in Saudi Arabia, where it was important for your mind to be in the game. But so I guess it was appropriate that one morning before I started my day, I'd eaten quite a bit for breakfast, and I needed to stop in the men's room at the time. So everyone does before breakfast. I'm not going to just, that's what you do. So, by the way, does anybody brought a ball cap with them? Anybody have one? I meant to have one with me. You've got a ball cap. Now, I know you're worried about where this story is going, but you really need to know this. So, in the military, we wear these things called organizational hats, kind of like this is, a Michigan hat. This is So, you know, ours had the chaplain seal up there and chaplain's cross actually is what it had. And so when you enter a room, you put that right here. Now, that will make no noise when it hits porcelain. So I'm just saying, okay? So you know where it went, and
You're not going down the hall, are you?
so you know where it went. And you know, I get up and I did my paperwork, and so I got up and I looked back. You know what I saw. I don't need to try it. So, but I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, run, Chaplain, run! I'm thinking, put full left in. Oh! So, I was not about to put that thing back on or even wash it or anything, but I did. I didn't want things stopped up. Anyway, that's it. So I walk across the base, all the way across the base, to where I thought they would sell me a new hat at the BX, that's like our Walmart, right? So that's where the uniform shop. So I thought, I get over there, but this is my first appointment. I didn't know. I got over there. Oh, by the way, if you walk across base without a hat, this is what the sergeants do. Be careful, look very closely. They don't say anything that you don't have a hat on because you're supposed to salute. Now you can't salute without a hat. So you're in this double bind. So I get across base and they say to me, no, this is a deployed location. We don't sell uniforms. You have to get that where? You have to get that from your NCOIC. That's some of you know, that's like your office manager. That's like Maria. Where's Maria? Where's Maria? I can just imagine coming to Maria with this story. Well, I'm not going to tell Maria the story because she's a nice lady. I'm not going to tell her the story. I said, and his name was Tim, by the way. I said, Tim, I said, I said, I need a new hat. Well, why do you need a new hat, Chaplain? He said, I lost it. And he was just as good as this Tim. He said, well, tell me where you lost it and I'll help you look for it. He did one of these. He's like, I'll help you. Where do you think you lost it? And I said, I really can't tell you where I lost it. I just did. He said, well, I said, hey, I'm doing the paperwork and I need to know, like how did it come about and just give me one good reason why you need a new hat. And so I said, I told him the story. And as I tell him the story, I still remember this. His body just. And then it was down on his knees. And then I was telling him the part about the paperwork. And then I was telling him the part about I had to get it out and throw it away. And he fell over. I'm not even exaggerating. He fell over and pointed his finger at me. He said, Chaplain, he said, I have a lot of officers who have heads full of crap, but you're the first one that's ever told me that. He said, you get a new hat. Now that was a real loss in my life. I've had more losses than that. But I want to tell you something. I told that, but what about Bradshaw? He told you that you weren't getting promoted. Your life really was in a toilet. Your career was in a toilet. And I wrote that story up. And I sent it to a friend that I had met just a few months before, who was an editor of a newspaper in Florida. I said, I've sent this story around the base and people love it. They think I'm a writer. They think it's funny. They think it's good. And I said, could you put that in your newspaper? Not a chance, Chaplain, not a chance in the world that I'm going to put that story in my paper. But he said, you do write well, and could you submit an idea for a newspaper column? And 7 months, I did, and 7 months later it was syndicated, and I've been doing it for 23 years. You've just been reading it for 5 years, so that's what a lot of my books are. They're a compilation of those newspaper columns. I hope you can catch up with them. But here's the deal. Bradshaw asked me to just trust him. And And the thing is, all of you know, trust is best left to trust in God, not man. And almost 20 years later, after that famous toilet week, I was able to wind down a successful career in the military. Did I get promoted? Not an active duty side, but I went over to the reserves. And as a reservist, I had a life in the hospital, in the hospice, and I had a life in the military, and I was half and half. And I got to live in the same place. I got to defend Sacramento, California for freedom. And so for 13 more years and retired well. So I decided to trust God, and that's where that story ended, not in the toilet. Trust God. So thanks for coming out with me, guys, today. I think you would agree with me. If I ever met Bradshaw again, I'd have to say, trust me, God's not done with me yet. So, well, one more commercial. So we have books back there. We have a lot of people here. So there's a couple ways to do it. There's already pre-signed, but if you want to wait for me to put your name on it, you might have to wait a few minutes. But unlike a Baptist church, we actually have wine back there, which is pretty cool. So, there's water. It was watered this morning, so we know we're in the right place. You know what? I cut seminary that day they taught that, and so I don't know how to do that. They were teaching it, and I just like, oh, I missed that. So, all right. About the same.
Thank you very much, Norris. Great to have you here with us, and appreciate your presentation here. And as he mentioned earlier, books over there you'll be signing, and you can converse with him and his wife. The project in Honduras sounds wonderful. Also, there's a basket right over here, free will offering, help defray cost of bringing this experience to you. So it's all up to you. It's free will. And as Norris said, there are great not desserts, but small place there to have some good food, cheese, crackers, and all that, and also the beverages over there. Please eat it, because I don't want to eat all the cheese or drink all the wine. So appreciate it. Thank you for coming out, and it's great to have you here. And have a safe trip home, but mingle with each other. If you don't know anyone, meet them. All right. Have a good evening. Thank you very much.